Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm here and I'm joined by my podcast team. And let me introduce you to them, starting off with Blue Fox. Blue Fox, how are you? Welcome to the podcast. And you've brought along a game representing either cutscenes or boss battles. Do you want to go through that right now with us?
Yes, thank you for having me for the podcast. I'm Blue Fox. I've already been here countless times, so I'll cut to the chase. Today I brought Nier Autonoma. That has both a lot of cutscenes and a lot of boss fights, and I think it's a good example to bring in today's discussion.
Brilliant, that's amazing. And next, I'm going to bring along Danny, who's going to be helping me co-host this podcast. You brought along a game, if I'm correct, it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 from 2009, not the 2022 version, as most people may have thought just there for a second. But yes, do you want to go through why you brought along that game?
I brought on this game because I recently played it let's say a week ago, and it really brought back a lot of memories and just playing it, and the boss battle. The reason why I chose it because the boss battle at the end is Shepard. But when you think of a boss battle, you think of a health bar at the top and just killing the boss. But Shepard's a bit different. You kind of kill Shepard in the cutscene, if that makes sense. And I've just brought it along because I thought it would be suitable for this podcast.
Okay, brilliant. And then next on the list that I'm bringing along Alwood, because Alwood has brought along Batman Arkham City. Why have you brought along Arkham City, Alwood?
Hey guys, it's me, Elwood here, and the reason I chose Batman Arkham City is because I thought it had a good balance of cutscenes and boss fights. It definitely improved on what they established in Arkham Asylum, and just made it 10 times as better in the sequel, because the boss battles were fine in Arkham Asylum and the cutscenes were okay, but they just made it way better.
That's good. And for me, I won't go into it too much because I'll get into it properly in the podcast, but Batman Arkham City is a game that I have also played. It's a long game, isn't it? That's a long game, isn't it, Alwood?
Yeah, it's definitely going to take a few hours.
Yeah, it's not a 5-minute game. And last but not least, definitely not least, we've brought along a new a person who's only been in the podcast once before now. You can search him up on his YouTube channel of that guy, or in the podcast. We're going to call him Anthony for this session. Anthony, do you want to say what games you brought along? Because I think you brought along Spider-Man and The Forest and Mortal Kombat. Why have you brought along those games?
So I'm more of a console gamer, so I chose these ones because I played them both and beat them fully before. They both have cutscenes and boss battles, which is why I thought they were perfect, and they have a lot of scenes that are executed in a filmed manner, very cinematic. So I just wanted to talk about those and bring them up, especially since The Forest is a horror game, and you wouldn't think that would have cutscenes. So
and I brought along Halo. Because this is kind of the reason why I brought it along. There is this scene in this game where you're right at the beginning, and it's the first introduction to Halo, and everything's going well. You got gun shooting everywhere, and then you get to this section where you're Master Chief, and you're running away. You're getting out of this spaceship, and you've got to get out of it. So you've got to go into a pod, a life pod, because it's going to crash. And you're like, okay, I've got into the life pod, and as soon as you hit the life pod, cutscene plays, and it takes you to the planet. And I'm like, you know what? That'd be really cool if I had a first-person motion, so I could actually see what that experience was like. Obviously, it's an older game, and yeah, I get it, I understand, but I disagree that we should have cutscenes. I think gameplay in video games is a lot better than cutscenes. But in this podcast, we're going to find out why. So let's get started with the first question. Danny, do you want to ask the first question, please?
Yeah, so the first question, I'm going to ask this to Elwood. Elwood, do you think boss battles are an essential part of a video game experience?
Well, yes, because it's definitely good to challenge the player in a game. It's not going to be any fun if you just fight a bunch of enemies and just walk through the game. That would be Avengers by Square Enix. But anyways, but yeah, I think the boss battle is a central part of a game, and have been in games since the dawn of video games, like with Mario or Atari games.
Yeah, like for me, it kind of depends what type of gamer you are, like what type of play style you like. Like I'm not really like I'm more of an FPS gamer, so I don't really experience a lot of boss battles. But yeah, I do think boss battles aren't essential, but are essential if that makes sense. It really just depends what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, exactly. Like it depends on the game that you're playing.
Yeah. All right. Seb.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask the same question to Blue Fox. Blue Fox, do you think boss battles are essential to video game experiences?
I do not. I'm in the contrary opinion because I believe that many games work without boss fights. There are some games that definitely are based around bosses. You know, we think of Cuphead, which is basically a boss rush. But in many other games that may be a bit more relaxing, but even more competitive, like, you know, Age of Empires 2, you know, there's not a boss fight per se. There's just a lot of maps to play against enemies. So it's the word essential in the phrase, it's a bit too much. I would say that are important in some games, are crucial in others, but not essential in other games.
Okay, that's interesting the way you say that, because immediately you made me think of one thing, when you think of a boss battle, you think of like a big monster that's going to take 1,000 hits. But not all games are like that, because sometimes you get like GTA, where a boss battle might be just an average person that you could possibly shoot with a bullet to progress the story along, and that would I think that still counts as like a battle. It might not be like the big boss battle, but it would be some type of boss battle, but it would be in a different format. It would be a different way, but it still progress the game along. So what's your take? Do you think then all boss battles have to be big giant monsters?
Absolutely not. Of course, as you mentioned, many games have different realities. For instance, in Nier Automata, which is the game that I brought today, the bosses are quite huge. As you said, they are quite enormous, and the fights are always epic. But in some other games, like in Mafia, for instance, you know, bosses are just other NPCs, which, you know, you can take down with some bullets. So it's definitely bosses. It's a term that conveys a lot of different enemies.
Because it could be, and have me on this, it could be, if you're in a racing game, it could be the guy you're racing against in that outstance. Because it could be the form of a race and the person in front of you. That's what it could be. Anyway, Danny, next question.
Yep, thank you for that. Next question is going to be to Anthony. Anthony, do you believe that cutscenes enhance the storytelling in the video games?
Okay, so cutscenes that contribute to the plot of the game are beautiful in my opinion, and when a cutscene happens that isn't necessary, it starts to annoy me, but that's just my opinion. There are also video games and there's movies, so they're not the same thing. So you spend money on a video game and it's not to watch a cutscene, and it automatically does it for you. I'm like, what the heck, I want to play the game. So in Spider-Man Miles Morales, it's cinematic and you have to press buttons at the right moment in the cutscenes. So I think that's really cool and it's perfectly executed. However, when you're about to be a big character like Rhino, for example, the cutscene takes over and you just watch Spider-Man beat him, although that's the work that you did. So it really depends. So if it contributes to the plot, yes, it's really nice to have. Like in the forest in the beginning, I think the cutscene in the beginning is perfect. And sometimes in the video games too, but not all the time when it's just unnecessary, you know? That's my opinion.
Anthony, do you think you're the person who's likely to skip the cutscenes? Depends if they're boring or not. Like, if it's not interesting, if it's too long, you're most likely going to skip it. But if it's like nice, quick and short, 15 seconds, no one's really going to skip it.
Yeah, like if it's shorter, yeah, but it just depends if it for the plot, in my opinion, and you should skip it if it's like not part of the plot.
Yeah, because like Activision does it like they make it really like they make it look like a movie, if that makes sense, and they make it like 15 seconds. So you literally get like Captain Price just talking like a British accent and just explaining what the mission's going to be next, and like they've done it in like a movie type of thing. If that makes sense.
Moving on to the game like Skyrim, though, you don't get any cutscenes in Skyrim. I think there's very minor cutscenes, like where you might sleep in a location and you wake up somewhere else, and for a few seconds the game takes over a little bit, but it's really tiny, that type of stuff. But yeah, no, okay, moving on to the next question. What is the question, Danny? I have no idea where we're at right now.
Neither do I, but I believe it's going to Blue Fox, and the question is, are boss battles too easy in the modern video games?
Well, too easy is a bit, I mean, they're not too easy, but I would say they are easier than they used to be. Not by the battles themselves. The battles themselves were hard.
But by the
in
time
previous
it
games.
takes to do it.
By the time it takes to do it, and also modern games are gentle in the surroundings of the boss battle. So, for instance, in most games, you will find like a safe spot just before the boss battle, or perhaps you fight the boss and you reach like a half point, and then when you die, you respawn from the half point.
Yeah.
So older games didn't used to have that. Medieval is infamous in this regard. It's a game that if you lost to the boss, you would need to do the whole level again. So it's I would say that they're easier. Not too easy, but easier than the past.
Yeah, I got nothing really to add on to that, really. Seb, next question. What you got?
No, but Anthony, what do you think? Are boss battles too easy in modern video games? Because how are some of them quite hard? I mean, like, what about the games that you brought along? What do you experience from that kind of thing?
So, in the games that I play in modern day gaming, usually have like a difficulty setting in the beginning, like easy, normal, hard, brutal, and I think that is what I should talk about. So, it really depends on what you pick for the difficulty. So, it can be ridiculously easy or ridiculously hard depending on the difficulty you set. Like, they have those in Spider-Man Miles Morales and The Forest. But the boss fights are also unique because they add new elements and animations to the game, and you have to kind of adapt to the fight. And I really appreciate those when they add those, because it's not the same thing and then you get to the boss fight and it's the same thing. It's something that you have to like adapt and change, and like, oh crap, I gotta do this. I also appreciate when the boss battle forces you to focus and you have to sit forward, you know what I mean, and be quiet. And like, I love it when I see YouTubers and I'm watching them and they're going against like a big boss and they can't even like commentate what's going on because of how concentrated they are. And I also like what Blue Fox said about how it depends on how much you have to work to get on your respawn where you go to get back to the boss fight.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Um,
I'm gonna, before we go, I'm gonna say the same thing to Howard right there. Howard, do you think that boss battles are too easy in modern video games?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I'd definitely say it depends on the game that you're talking about.
Okay.
Because like in like Mario games, like of course they're pretty easy. You just jump on the guy's head and he goes down. That's simple. But for games like Elden Ring or like Cuphead, they take a little bit more thinking to take down. Like you have to dodge and weave all these huge attacks from the bad guy that you have to figure out what the best strategy is on taking them out.
Danny.
Yep. Next question.
No, on you quickly. I just want to ask you something.
Yep.
What is your take? Depending on what Howard just said to there, I was going to ask you, because I know you're quite familiar with this. Horror games, when it comes to boss battles, I think horror games are a little bit harder when it comes to gaming due to boss battles than other video games out there, because horror games require a certain amount of do I walk through this room? Do I actually want to face this big, massive monster? Because if you've played Dead Space, you'll have that similar experience. And I know you've played Dead Space.
Yeah, I know, because like when I played Dead Space, like you're walking around the spaceship and like you know there's like enemies, but like even if you don't see any, you're still like really like on the edge, because like all this all like the
Last of Us.
all of like
Similar.
Sorry.
Oh, I can't bloody speak English. 1 second.
I saw your fight in the on the main deck, and it was like you're in that main deck area. Well, did you get to the main deck in your playthrough?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
did you?
Well, I don't know.
Did you? I don't know. You get to a certain fight scene, and it's not so much as the ability of whether the game's easy or not. It's the ability of, I didn't see that coming. That's that part. It could be on easy difficulty, but if you didn't see it coming,
It's scary as hell.
it puts you off a little bit, and it's that putting you off that makes the game a little bit harder, I believe. Right then, moving on to the next question.
Yeah, exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah. Next question I'm asked is to Blue Fox. Blue Fox, do you think boss battles are overused in video games?
This is a bit challenging to answer because, of course, different games use them in different degrees. The game that I've brought, of course, has many bosses. I chose it specifically for the topic of today's video, so I suppose yes, they are overused, but in most games I think that they are well balanced. Or at the very least, if there are too many bosses, it's because, you know, the game requires you to fight bosses. There are boss rushes, or simply it's the game structure to have bosses. So I would say it depends. It depends on the game, but mostly developers try to balance out game bosses with gameplay. So
Yeah.
I would say they're not overused.
Yeah, because nowadays, like, you don't really get many boss battles in, like, big major games, but, like, back in, like, the old days, like, 20, 30 years ago, you'd get a lot of boss battles you had to do, and, like, every game that came out just would have a boss battle in it.
Yeah, in this regard, I would say that games, of course, games originally had to have boss battles. That was the whole point of the game. You had a boss battle.
Yeah.
But then in the transition between older games and, like, you know, current games, we have seen some mixed bags. So, you know, if I were to bring an example, I would bring like Assassin's Creed 2, where there are boss battles like punching the Pope, which felt very odd, to say the least. I mean, they just had to place the boss battle because that was the main guy that you had to fight, and you had to fight them. There was no cutscene that could alleviate that. So
Yeah.
I would say that now we found quite a good balance between when actually to have a boss battle and when not.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I kind of find funny as a boss fight is the electrocutioner from Batman Origins, where it's like, oh, you're gonna have this giant boss fight with like a bunch of enemies, and then just Batman kicks his face in, and with one kick, and he goes down.
Blue Fox, I want to go on the answer to that, the whole system of, like, because I know you play a particular game that I think you play a particular game that I was going to ask on the end of that. Boss battles overused. What do you think about the particular bosses? Like, my favorite bosses in video games are bosses that you don't know are there. Like, you can see loads of people there, but the bosses that I think are better are the bosses that you don't actually expect until you're actually at the location. I think the best example for this, and I like the mystery behind a boss battle, Fallout 3, when you find out who the president is.
Yes, that's a good example, but since I've brought a game specifically for this podcast, I think it would be wise for me to use it. In Nier Automata, as I've mentioned, there are many bosses, and one of my favorites is not one of the major bosses. It's actually, one that you find early in the game and is quite forgotten about, which is Beauvoir.
Oh, I love that.
Which has a very beautiful aesthetic, and the meaning of that boss is important later in the story. So it makes you think, that boss. It's not the main important. It's not the main boss. It's not even like related to like the main enemies that you're fighting. It's just like a boss that you have to fight to progress. But I think the aesthetics, the boss battle itself, also the right level of skills. I think it's one of the hardest boss at the beginning of the game. Let's say, like, from your skill set.
Okay.
I think it's one of the best boss, and it's also a big surprise. So I think it's you're right. A boss doesn't need to be difficult to fight to be a good boss. It has to be surprising, or at least catch you off guard.
Okay, and you know what? I will tell you what. I will go over to Anthony and I'll ask him a question. Do you think that boss battles in video games are overused, or do you think they're just fine the way they are?
I would agree with what they said, to be honest. So, like, in the modern day, it's not too used. It really depends on what video games you play. So if you're like an FPS gamer, then you're not really gonna see a lot of boss fights. But it's more the story mode games. But I don't think it's overused even in story mode games too much. And I like it when it's unexpected too, like how they said. So I really just agree with them. And in old school gaming, it's not like, well, it is kind of, but yeah, old school games have more bosses. Now that I think about it, like all the old school games that I play at least, so I just basically agree with them mostly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
All right then. Next question.
Danny.
Yeah, I might ask this one to Blue Fox. Blue Fox, do you think that cutscenes are necessary for a video game experience?
I think they are for some games and they aren't for others. I mean, of course, point taken for like strategy games. Of course, they don't need cutscenes at all. But for narrative-driven adventures, I think they are important. I do like when games implement story elements within the gameplay, so while you're playing, things happen rather than to stop the momentum to make you see a cutscene. But in some other games, it is nice when, we're speaking about boss fights, right? So once you defeat the boss fight, there's a cooldown moment where you see the cutscene and you see the story progress without any inputs, because you have given all yourself in, you have defeated the strongest boss of the game, and then you can just enjoy and see the story rather than to carry on playing. So I think they are important.
Yeah, I do think cutscenes are important to have like a good gaming experience, because like if you don't have cutscenes, you never really know what's happening, because like cutscenes are there to tell you what's happening, like the next bit of the game, or like what's happening later, or what happened earlier. Like I do think like cutscenes are a necessary part of like a good gaming experience.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a game like The Last of Us. Like you wouldn't be able to know what would be happening if you skipped all the cutscenes. Like, you wouldn't get the emotional feel for the characters if you did that way.
Yeah. Seb?
Yeah, I wanted to mention on that and just bring my own word in. Danny, in your game Call of Duty, yeah, your cutscenes aren't as much like, because in the 2009
Very
version,
cinematic, if that makes sense.
they take you up in the air and they kind of give you a sit rep of the planet, and you
Yeah,
get some
yeah.
conversation.
So like
Now-
it's like a bird's eye view of the whole world, and you have like
Yeah.
Captain Price or something like give you like a voiceover of what's happening, like what's happening in the world, and like it switches you in different areas of the world and it tells you what's happening.
Exactly.
And I think that's a nice way to do things. They know that cutscenes are informative. You played the new Modern Warfare, right?
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2?
Yes, I have.
Now that's a little bit different, isn't it? Now, how does that change the gameplay experience? Do you actually pay attention to it more or less because they're actual cutscenes in a game?
Wait. Ask that question again.
So in the 2022 version
Yeah.
of Modern Warfare, the newer version, when you watch those cutscenes, do you think they're better or do you think they're worse? Because there are some points, like I've seen one where they're on a meeting table and I'm like, why can't you just do that yourself? Why can't you be there in the game looking at the map and seeing everything
I think
yourself?
they
Like,
went at it a bit differently. Like they went at it at like a person's perspective, like you or me, like just looking at them. I think they went at it as like that type of cutscene. I like it. I like both of them, but I would prefer what they did with the new Modern Warfare.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I will go to the next question, which is, are boss battles in video games too challenging for most players? And I'm going to ask Howard that question.
Wait, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Are boss battles in video games too challenging for most players? And I'm going with the harder ones. The more harder games.
Ooh, the harder games. Yeah, I can definitely see how it can be harder for most players. Like it's gonna definitely take you a lot more than one time to take down the boss. Like if per se, like you're playing Cuphead, Like, it's gonna take you a lot more than like like 1 or 2 deaths to defeat one boss. But I definitely feel like those games are more like for hardcore gamers, like people who know how to play a game, instead of just like, oh, like this gaming thing looks interesting, I guess I'll just play some games.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. It's a very much like it's very narrow-minded to people that like playing a certain game, rather than trying to bring everybody in on that. And to make that hard like, is a very interesting thing. Like, for example, like Dark Souls and all that kind of stuff. That's very much at a point where that game is going to be hard, even if you're on the easy mode. Another question: does GTA have a difficulty setting?
Not really.
Or is it just like normal for everybody? Like, I mean, like,
well, if you're
how
playing,
do they do the difficulty?
Oh, are you talking about story mode or online mode?
I was gonna with the either.
Well, online it's really about like heist, like the heist difficulty. Because like every online session is difficult. It just depends what type of people you have in the game. Like, do you have griefers and like tryhards, just normal casual players? And in heist, you can have a really hard heist, like the Doomsday Act 3, which takes a long time. It just depends what team you have. But in story mode, it's quite like normal difficulty in story mode. Yeah, again, it just depends on what mission you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm also gonna ask this question to Blue Fox. Blue Fox, do you think boss battles nowadays in video games are too challenging for most players?
Well, I've explained earlier that boss battles were harder in past games rather than current games. But definitely newer games have options to lower difficulty, or at least keep a boss battle that is optional. Usually, like, the optional boss battles are the hardest ones. So I would say that they are hard, and you know, in some games, as Elwood has mentioned before, Cuphead, you know, you do need to die a lot of times. There is no way around it. You have to learn by try. There is no predetermined skill set that will allow you to play Cuphead without death from the first run. But in most games, most average games, I would say that boss fights are not that hard, or at least they can be changed in difficulty.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but like I've never really actually played like a boss battle game. Like I'm not from that time where like boss battles were a big thing. Like I'm mainly like now generation, which doesn't have many boss battles. It just depends on what game you're playing. And yeah. Anyone want to add on to that until we go to the next question?
I'm all good.
Alright, next question. I'm gonna ask this to Anthony. Anthony, are boss battles predictable in most video games nowadays?
Yes. Nowadays, I would say yeah, because it's this big bad guy or this person that's like obviously evil or something's wrong with them, and then they just want to hurt you. Or like in the beginning of the story, they'll just show them off to you, and then later they'll just come. Like, for me it's predictable, but there are some games where it isn't, and I really value those games, like The Forest. It doesn't show you the bad guy. It doesn't even show you. It just gives you clues and hints, and it doesn't even make sense like when you're playing the game, but in the end all the pieces come together and you're like, oh, I see who's the boss now. So I appreciate those games, but most of the games with boss battles nowadays, at least, are pretty obvious, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
I will agree on that, because I know there's a certain amount of people that haven't played The Forest that still want to get into it, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but there is a point in the Forest game where everything changes, and at that point, if you know what I mean, you'll go, oh right, this is weird, I'm not quite getting this, things are getting a little bit more confusing than I thought in the first place. And you'll know what part I mean if you've played the game. You'll start going, wait, what's happening here? What's this? I have no idea why I'm here anymore. And you'll get that feeling without spoiling it. You see, you get what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. Okay. Moving on to the next question. Sorry, is it next question? No, you know what? I'm going to pass this on to Howard. Howard, what do you think? Do you think boss battles in video games are getting too predictable, or do you think there are some out there that still hold a unique feature that you don't see coming?
Ooh.
well, that actually ties in a lot with my game Batman Arkham City, because like everyone thinks that like what happens to the Joker, like, oh, he's about to die in like one scene, but then he appears all better in another, like at the end of the game. It's like, oh, what's happening to him? And then when we find out that he's apparently Clayface and the real Joker is close to death, that kind of brings like a plot twist. Like, we're not facing the Joker again, like we're facing Clayface and seeing how he can handle being the last boss, which I think he is a pretty good last boss. So yeah, that's like, it can definitely bring a element of surprise, like bringing out like the main character, like the character that you think is the villain, but then twisting it and saying that like this guy's the villain. But if they do it well, which I'm saying.
Yeah, that's very true. I kind of like Halo for that exact reason. When I brought my game along, there was also another reason on the end of it was in Halo, you keep thinking the main bad guy is this one particular thing, and then all of a sudden there's a third element in the thing. You're like, wait, what the heck? It turns into like a battle from all angles. And then in the next Halo game after that, you start seeing that there's even another on top of that. There's 4 different kind of space people, like space leaders, or I don't know what you call them. There's 4 different type of aliens, including the humans, that have a different perspective on this war, and then you kind of start seeing it from 4 different angles. I mean, obviously you're on the side of the humans, but you kind of also see why the other people want to do things their way, and you get to see different angles, and you start thinking one's the bad guy, then you start realizing it's not that's not true. They've been false believed certain things, and it gets all confusing, but it's an interesting take for anyone who likes lore in video games. Anyway, moving on to the next question. Danny, is it on you now?
Yes, I believe it
yeah.
is. I'm going to ask this to Blue Fox. Blue Fox, do you enjoy the cinematics in video games?
I do, yes. I do enjoy the cinematics, especially when they are in gameplay transitions. So when the game doesn't take you out for like a pre-rendered cutscene, but the cutscene happens in-game. I think that works extremely well in one of the final bosses of Nier Automata, which is Koshiroshi, because the game has cutscenes per se, which are still in the gameplay. So you still play while there are cutscenes while you fight the boss. So in that sense, it works sublimely.
Yeah, I love
Okay.
cinematics. Like, for instance, Call of Duty has some of the best cinematics in my opinion. Like, I just love, like, even if I'm not playing, if it's for like more than a minute, if it's a cinematic, I love just watching it and just sitting and watching it, because it's practically just a movie. I'm just watching like a 1-minute movie.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on this? Do you enjoy watching cutscene cinematics in video games?
I'm trying to think. I think if it sets the mood right, then yes. So like, if that makes sense, like if it's a horror game and it's like a scary cutscene that makes you like want to run away, then yeah, that's good. But like, if it's something that's not necessary, like I said, then no, I would say, what the heck is this? Just let me play the game.
You know, it's very interesting you mentioned horror game, because I want to expand on that. Which is more scarier? You as the player controlling the character, walking into a room that you know something's going to happening, or if a cutscene takes place?
Oh,
and it does it
definitely
for
you playing, yeah.
Yeah, because that's my thing. If you are the character and you control the person that's walking up to something scary, and you know it's going to be scary, I hate that feeling. It's horrible. And there are so many games that do that. And I think Dead Space is a very good example, where you will walk up to a window and you have the choice of walking away from it and just going to the next area, or you could just watch it play out. And if you watch it play out, it gets really bloody scary. You just start seeing like a monster just overtaking a character. Like, what's happening? This isn't right. I hate this. And then all of a sudden, he starts attacking you, and you're like, wait, what happened there? I didn't want to. You do have the choice of completely skipping that, and I think that's something that like needs to be looked at in certain games. When you create a horror game, the fear is what happens when you're at certain locations, and you yeah. So I agree. I agree on that. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to next question, Danny.
Next question, I'm going to ask this to Elwood. Elwood, do you believe that boss battles are a good way to test a player's skill in video games?
Yes, because it kind of, if you do a boss battle right, then it can show you how you progressed through the game. If a boss battle can per se use different gadgets that you have collected throughout the game or abilities, then it shows your progress throughout the game and how you've gotten good at the game.
Have you guys ever been in a situation where you've played a video game and it has upgrades in it? And if you go to a certain area of the game, when you start going to certain difficult areas of the game, your upgrades actually pay off, because once you've upgraded, you've gone into a room and you're like, you can own it, you can own the situation a bit more. But if you've completely not actually searched areas in the past as you've led up to certain locations, you start realizing, this takes a little bit more than my average pistol, and I didn't pick up these guns or these bullets earlier on, so I don't have actually a lot of guns or bullets to take on these bad guys, and I'm stuck with my pistol, which ain't gonna do any work on these people. Have you ever been in a situation where that actually happened in a game, where you've not been able to take down a bad guy because you didn't have the right upgrades?
Yeah, Dead Space shows that really well, because in Dead Space you get put into the ship and then you realise there's these big ugly monster claw looking things trying to eat you alive, and you get really scared. And then when I found the buy station or the shop, and I upgraded all my armor, I felt like a bloody god, because they couldn't touch me anymore because I upgraded my whole suit and everything.
I started, I played a bit of the Callisto Protocol, which is based off that, and there were certain enemies that I'd walk up to, and I completely forgot to upgrade my character as I was going throughout the game, and I got to certain points in the game and I was like, I can't actually get past this area and defeat them all because I haven't upgraded myself, and I'm going to die if I take these people on. So I had to run past them, and when I realized the best thing to do to complete this game right now is to completely restart from scratch and actually look out for things. And it's a horrible feeling when you realize you've mistreated the game. And I've done it in other games like Fallout. When I first ever played Fallout 3, I would go into a certain room or a certain area, and I'd have gone, oh damn, I've completely forgotten to upgrade my character, I can't take on these bad guys. I'm going to say the same thing then to Blue Fox. Blue Fox, do you think boss battles are a good way to test players' skills in video games?
Oh, absolutely. They are the way to test the skills of a player. It's, the games may present to the player side quests or side bosses or side activities, but if you have to face one menace that will not let you progress through the story, and you cannot defeat it, it's either, as you said, you have to grind a little bit, you have to find the right gear, you have to find the right upgrades, fight the right enemies to level up and whatnot, but you also need to improve your play style in general. So a good game to bring as an example is of course Nier Automata, which is the game that I've been playing so far. In the game you can level up by just defeating enemies, that's a way to get stronger, but there are also ways to upgrade your gear and your character that are not quite explicit, are not quite evident that you level up and then you have a skill tree of some sort. It's a bit more hidden. You have to go to the market, you have to buy the microchips, you have to update your character, which is an android, so it's literally a robot. So you have to buy new chips and upgrade those chips. And definitely there are some areas that once you complete and move to the next one, you feel underpowered because you may have forgotten to have done these upgrades constantly, and then although you've raised them to the right level, you may not have the right skill set to fight.
Yeah, I agree. That just emphasized, I think, what everyone else has said, and yeah, I think I completely agree on that. I'm going to ask the next question then to Anthony. Anthony, do you think cutscenes are too long in video games?
In the forest, I think it depends on the game and really how long. So in the forest,
depends on the game.
Yeah, in the forest, no. They're the perfect amount just to tell you the right information you need. In Spider-Man Miles Morales, yes, there's some like fluff in there that like, do I really need to hear this? And like just the dialogue between the characters, it's nice, but like it doesn't really. At the end of the game, you don't really think about that, if you know what I mean.
I'm going to bring up a game that I'm not quite sure. Has anyone played the game Mass Effect?
Yes.
Nope.
Mass Effect 3?
I only played the first one.
How long have you completed it all the way through to the end?
Oh, it's been ages. I don't recall much, but
I'm going to mention a thing. There is they did the cutscenes very well at the ending of the Mass Effect 3 game. I'm not going to say too much of what it was. I'm just going to say it and try and spoiler free. But you get to a point where the cutscene starts playing out, but they realize it's important for the player to experience the battle as well as seeing it. So you'll fight on the ground, but every time you reach a certain checkpoint, it would show you the battle in space. So you'd have a battle on ground, and then have a battle in space, and then a battle on ground, and a battle in space. And all the battles in space would be all cutscenes, and they'd be like really dramatized, and there'd be spaceships fighting spaceships. It's a really good take on yeah, you can have really long cutscenes, but you could do it so the cutscenes are split off and they only play at certain checkpoints, which I found was a very interesting way of them doing that game. But yeah, no, I liked the game Mass Effect for that particular reason. Danny, on you.
What, next question?
Yeah.
I might ask this to Elwood. Elwood,
Yeah.
do you think that cutscenes are too long in video games?
It really depends on the game, really, because like in like a regular Mario game, like they have cutscenes, but they're not too long. Or like in a Call of Duty game, like cutscenes aren't too long, but for like something like The Last of Us or I don't know, some other game that's very cinematic, like God of War, like they have very long cinematic cutscenes, but I think they're worth it because they show a lot of like detail in the environment and characters. So I kind of feel like it's both a blessing and a curse.
I think video games have balanced it like really well about how long and how short cutscenes are. Like a cutscene can last around 15 seconds, which is like the sweet spot of all cutscenes. Again, it just depends on what game it is.
may I comment on this question?
Yeah, go on.
It's as you recall earlier, I brought the example of Yakuza 0, which has one cutscene that lasts 40 minutes, and in this cutscene there are two characters that are unknown for the player. The player is not introduced to these characters before, so they are brand new, and they serve absolutely no purpose to the story. They only serve to introduce the player to the bazaar, not the bazaar, the salon where one of the main characters works. And although at first I was frustrated because, as Anthony was saying, you know, why do I need to hear like the dialogue between two characters that I do not care about, and at the end of the game I will not recall. These cutscenes may serve as a way for the director to slowly introduce a concept without the player knowing it, and then when the concept is revealed, then it makes much more sense and it makes much more a bigger reveal. Then you know, I understand that you may enjoy shorter cutscenes of like 15 seconds, but in other games like Yakuza, you need to have long cutscenes because you truly need to explain big concept, explain big reveals, explain character and their characteristics in a complete manner, rather than to do it in piece by piece and then figure out the rest.
Yeah.
So yes, I do not mind for cutscenes to be too long. I mean, they can be bad cutscenes. I'm not denying that, you know, some games have bad cutscenes in general, but games that do it well do not need to be limited.
So I'm gonna ask Howard. Howard, when you play your games like Batman Arkham City, for example, do you think that cutscenes have the ability to feel different if you play them round the second time? Like, do you think that when you go through them twice, that they provide a different feel of how you fight in those battles?
Well, yeah, it kind of gives you a different feel because you kind of know all of the secrets. Like, like first time around, you wonder, what is Protocol 10? And then when you play it for the second time, it's like, it's just blowing up the city, and Batman will stop it. And it's like, what's really happening to the Joker? It's like, it's Clayface sometimes. It brings you into like a new like way of thinking around this, like around the plot points, kind of.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it kind of
There's
ruins
that-
the surprises.
Like, if it's a game with a plot twist reveal, second time around playing it, you're kind of already aware of the plot twist, so you're kind of paired where you need to stand or what type of stuff you need before actually it triggering. Blue Fox, your take on this?
My take is that this is a very good question to bring for Nier Automata, because in the game, for reasons that I do not wish to reveal due to spoilers, but I'll keep it very vague, you will need to see some of the cutscenes again, but you see it in a second occasion when you learn new things, and while you see them again, you realize how, well, the reality of the world changed, and suddenly they gain a new meaning. So I would say that if you play it smartly as a developer, you can recycle some cutscenes, or, well, if you play the game again, and then make the player think and observe details that they have not observed the first time around, so they enjoy the cutscene even more. So it can be good, but of course, I mean, if the cutscenes are weak from the beginning, seeing them again will not help.
And Anthony, just from you, because I know that The Forest has a bit of a big plot twist in it. What's your take on this question?
Could I hear the question again, please?
Yeah, sure. Basically, the second time round when playing a game, do the cutscenes and the boss battles feel different due to do the boss battles feel different due to your taking them on a second time round, that you know what's already going to happen? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it really depends on the lore. Like, if it's something like dark, you're gonna be like, oh my god, I did not see you just don't see it the same after the first time, because you walk in there with a blank mind. But when the second time around you go in there, you know exactly what is going on, so your attitude kind of changed towards everything, and you might do a lot of things that you wouldn't do if you were first playing the game.
Yeah, okay, I agree. Okay, Danny, do you want to bring it to a slowly sudden end?
So the final question is going to be, what is your guys' favourite boss battles and cutscenes in all the games? Like, what is your guys' favourite boss battle? And you can only choose one game.
Okay, I'm going to start off this because I'm going to start kicking off with my first fave. I'm going to kickstart it with the game that I actually brought along, and I would say it's my favorite for this one reason, but like, there's some parts that I hate about it, which I kind of like it and hate it at the same time, but it would always be the Brute Chieftain at the end of Halo 2 for me.
I can't really say. Well, I don't know if this is a boss battle or a cutscene, but my favorite boss battle / cutscene is when you take down Nikita Dragovich in Black Ops 1. Considering how much...
that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because it's technically a cutscene and a boss battle, because Nikita Dragovich is the main villain who messed with Mason's mind and put the numbers in his head. And he was you get to choke him out while he's drowning, so that's pretty satisfying.
I wasn't expecting that to come from me, I'll be honest with you. Right, okay. Moving on then.
What do you expect?
I don't know what I was expecting. Okay, moving on to Anthony. What, Anthony, yours?
Yeah. So all time, my favorite boss battle for me was Mortal Kombat 9. going against
Yep.
Shao Kahn. It was my favorite boss battle. It's probably I'm probably a little biased because it's nostalgic for me on the Xbox 360, but also what else? It's because well, I don't really want to spoil it, but he does something that really pisses you off and it makes you like really want to win. So it kind of gives you like motivation to win, if you know what I mean. And
Motivation is important.
yeah, I don't know how to explain this without spoiling it, but
I
he
get
just,
what you're saying.
yeah. But yeah, he just really makes you mad, and it really makes you want to beat him, and I think that's what makes it really a really good boss battle, because there's so much hate that like you really just want to win. Unlike other boss battles, you're just like, oh, I'm completing the game. Oh, this was the boss. Okay, like the other games and horror games and stuff. But
When
this
you
one,
put hate behind it,
yeah,
that things make you start you just want it's not just about beating a guy in a game, you want the guy to get defeated, like you really
yeah,
want him to
because
get
this
defeated.
man is evil and he does not need to exist anymore. And then the game puts you up against him, and it's like, if this is your only hope, like, you know, like you're the only person that might be able to beat him. You're like, oh crap, I really want to beat this guy.
Yeah, every punch is meaningful in that situation.
Personal, yeah.
Yeah. Blue Fox, yours.
For me, my favorite cutscene, it's extremely hard to tell because, of course, I played a lot of games with a lot of cutscenes. But, you know, since I've read up so many times, I might as well choose the Yakuza 0 cutscene the last 40 minutes, just for everybody's joy. And for my favorite boss, I would say it's Camilla, which is the Pokemon champion of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. It was one of the hardest boss fights I recall to have played, both when I was younger and both when I was an adult and played the game again. It takes you quite off guard with the jump of difficulty, and since it's the champion, it's the last person you have to beat before, well, becoming the Pokemon champion. It's truly unforgettable.
And Danny, finally yours, and then after that you can end the podcast.
Yeah, so I don't really have a favourite cutscene because I don't really remember my favourite cutscenes, but I do have a favourite boss battle. And spoiler alert, it's Wolfenstein: The New Order, and you fight this person called Dr. Deathshed, if I pronounce that right. And basically, Deathshed, and it's a two-part boss battle. So the first thing is, because he's a Nazi doctor, yeah, he kills your friend at the start of the game, and then he puts his brain into a robot, and you have to kill your dead friend, if that makes sense. So after you killed him, he's dead, you then go on to kill Dr. Deathshed, and then Dr. Deathshed was like a really hard one for me because he kept just blowing me up and just shooting a bunch of bullets at me. But I eventually killed him, and it turned out to be really fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Alright then.
Right
So
then.
there you go. Then that's the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe and check out everybody's channel in the description because everybody's ever so creative and I love having everybody here. Thank you ever so much for being in the podcast.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Arrivederci.